Governor, you wish to pull that out? So which way are we going? Thank you.
That was Mitt Romney today, literally walking away from questions about his continued support of the Republican Senate candidate in Indiana, who said this.
I think even when life begins in that horrible situation of rape, that it is something that God intended to happen.
Joining me now, MSNBC's Joy Reid and Erin Carmone, a writer for Salon.com. Joy, this one's not going away.
No,
it's chasing Mitt Romney around on the campaign
and he's
trail.
running.
Well, at this point, he gets to just walk. Doesn't have to run away from it yet.
Right, correct. No, it's interesting because, if Mitt Romney was so confident, as he's been projecting on the trail, that, he's winning this thing is over. I think that he might have a bit more courage to push away Mr. Mourdock. But obviously he is afraid to do so. And I think the reason why might be that, A, he understands that a significant portion of the Republican base agrees with Mr. Mourdock. Indiana Right to Life has come out in favor of him. He's gotten tons of support. But I think the other reason might be sitting right next to him. Right next to Mr. Romney is a young man who said the following about pregnancies that result in rape. He said, I've always adopted the idea that the method of conception doesn't impact the meaning of life, or the beginning of life. So he referred to rape as a method of conception. That's Paul Ryan. That's not Mr. Mourdock. That's Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan has the exact same views. So Mr. Romney would have to repudiate his own running mate if he were to really, truly push away Mr. Mourdock, and he risks alienating and upsetting those far-right wingers who Romney clearly realizes he needs in the margins, because he really doesn't think he's
that's it, Erin. I mean, if Romney would have say no, he should apologize for saying that, the anti-abortion right that believes in no exceptions, which is a very large faction in the Republican Party, would say, what do you mean? What's wrong with what he said?
Mitt Romney, for his entire career, has been trying to have abortion every which way, right? I mean, we know he's changed his opinion so many times. At this point, at the same time that he's chosen Paul Ryan with his absolutist anti-abortion position, he's running ads claiming that he's a moderate on women's health.
The difference between Paul Ryan and this guy in Indiana is Paul Ryan is not on videotape saying exactly those words. However, they both completely agree on the policy that those words drive.
Absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, so does Mourdock's opponent, who's a Democrat. He believes in rape exceptions. At this point, it's as if Mourdock is a progressive within the Republican Party, because he thinks that you can get pregnant from rape, which is more than Todd Aiken.
That's a step up. Let's look at this this DNC ad that's come out today.
Even when life begins in that horrible situation of rape, that it is something that God intended to happen.
When it comes to rape, should it be legal for a woman to be able to get an abortion if she's...
So I'm very proud of my pro-life record, and I've always adopted the position that the method of conception doesn't change the definition of life.
And President Obama is backing that up on the campaign trail. Let's listen to what he just said moments ago, actually.
We saw again this week, you don't want a bunch of politicians in Washington, most of whom are male, making health care decisions for women. Women can make those decisions themselves. That's what I stand for. That's what I'll continue to stand for as President of the United States of America.
Joy, tactically, how does this work now? Because I have to bet that the president has all the voters who rank this as a very high and important issue for them. But you can have the voters' support. You don't have their turnout. You don't have them actually at the polls. Is this being used more as a turnout tactic on the Obama campaign, in addition to it actually being emphatically what he believes.
Yeah, because if you look at the polls, really the only gap that Barack Obama needs to make up is the enthusiasm gap. So in a lot of ways, what this is about is turning out younger women and getting them to say, listen, don't think that this is just an empty threat, that these guys wouldn't do this. They need to also be reminding voters that Paul Ryan, the same guy that was just in that ad, he and the House of Representatives spent a lot of time trying to legislate on this issue. They tried to actually put this into law just from the House of Representatives. You put a Mitt Romney in the White House, he's going to sign all that stuff. Mitt Romney wins and they get the Senate, they're going to pass that stuff. Don't think this is an empty threat. And I think that the Obama campaign is trying to convince particularly young women and their supporters this is not an empty threat and you need to move this up on your priority list. The Supreme Court is in the balance, Roe v. Wade is in the balance. This is a real threat.
According to my watch, the 48 hours is up and the president should be landing at any moment at Andrews from this 48-hour trip. I thought one of the interesting... Oh, hey, there it is, on the ground. How did I know? I promise you, no one whispered it in my ear. Aaron, one of the striking things for me about the Tonight Show appearance was when this came up, you could hear in that studio audience that they, in Burbank, that they were surprised. The typical cross-section of voters there, and probably a fair amount of low-information voters. And you could hear them. They were getting it for the first time, and there was kind of almost a gasp in the audience.
Yeah, I think it's actually really a challenge to convince people that the Republican Party is as extreme on women's issues as it is. They're holding up the Violence Against Women Act. They are trying to curtail access to birth control. They want to ban abortion in basically every circumstance. I mean, the fact that the government telling women that only the worst cases they're allowed to have autonomy over their body, that's the moderate position now. So again, I think when we had a Mitt Romney that showed up and seemed like a moderate and talked about the UN and all these debates, after a whole summer of Obama representing him as an extremist, moments like Richard Mourdock, moments like Todd Aiken are important because we see that this is really Mitt Romney's party. This is the position that they're coming from, and we have to remind voters, it's important to remind voters who care about women's health and women's rights that this is where they're coming from. This is not just talk. You mentioned the Supreme Court. We've got a fragile 5-4 right now for pro-choice, from the pro-choice side, upholding Roe v. Wade. So again, these are not hollow threats. This is absolutely a judicial priority, and you have people like Todd Aiken who consort with domestic terrorists taking over the party. They're not just the base, they're inside now.
And the next Supreme Court justice will be confirmed by the United States Senate, where Mourdock may have a vote. And Scott Brown is worried about this. The other candidates in other Senate races around the country are trying to emphasize what the United States Senate is about. And I think that's why John McCain did this very weird contortion where at first in his gut he was bothered by what he heard. Then he came around to get in line because he needs this guy in the Senate to vote for him to be chairman of a committee instead of the Democrat being the chairman of that committee.
Exactly. Remember the line from the Romney ad that he cut for Mourdock? He'll be the 51st vote.
For control of the Senate.
Exactly, exactly. And that's what this is about, is giving him that 51st vote. And women need to take that very gravely seriously.
And John McCain's decided he wants him to have that 51st vote. Joy Reid and Erin Carmone, thank you both for joining me tonight.
Thanks.
Coming up, the president's interview with Rolling Stone, where he says that word that I am just dying to say on this show. It's, well, you've all said it. You've all said it, but there are people here in the network who believe you must never hear it from us here on the network because of those crazy profanity rules. Anna Marie Cox and David Korn will be encouraging me to say it. And we'll see. The judges are going to tell us very soon whether we can use it. And later, electoral dysfunction in America. Mourdock is here to preview his amazing documentary about voting.